The crystalline spires of Galactic Academy pierced the nebular clouds of Kepler 442b like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Within the Academy's bioadaptive corridors, beings from 100 worlds pursued knowledge that would shape the future of the galaxy. Yet in Classroom 7 Alpha, one student sat alone. Zara-chon pressed her stylus against the quantum tablet, her human fingers so primitive compared to the energy-manipulating appendages around, her struggling to keep pace with the advanced theoretical physics lecture. Professor Vextar, a towering Etherian whose body flickered between dimensions, gestured toward holographic equations that danced through the air like living mathematics. "The quantum consciousness bridge," Vextar intoned, his voice resonating, "through multiple realities, allows advanced species to directly interface with spacetime itself. Of course, some beings," his translucent gaze fell upon Zara, "require technological assistance for even basic comprehension." Snickers rippled through the amphitheater. Kef, a Valorian whose crystalline armor plating caught and refracted the room's bioluminescent lighting, leaned toward his companion. "How did the admissions board even approve a human?" he whispered, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, despite his attempt at discretion. "I can't even live past 100 cycles." Shira, a lithe psionic with silver neural tendrils that sparkled with telepathic energy, smiled without warmth. Her mind voice touched every consciousness in the room except Zara's. "The primitive probably thinks she's learning something. It's almost endearing, like watching a domesticated creature perform tricks." Zara's jaw tightened, but she kept her focus on the lesson. She'd grown accustomed to being the Academy's living curiosity, the token human admitted under the galactic diversity initiative. Her acceptance letter had been celebrated across Earth's educational networks. But here, surrounded by beings who could bend reality with thought alone, she felt like an imposter wearing clothes too large for her frame. After class, as students filed out in clusters of familiar species, Zara found herself walking alone through the Academy's central plaza. The space was a marvel of engineering, with gravity fields that allowed beings from different worlds to exist comfortably in the same area. Aquatic Nereidans glided through water-filled tubes that intersected with the walkways, while gaseous astrolites drifted in contained atmospheric pockets above. "Zara," Professor Vextar's voice materialized beside her, "I wanted to discuss your performance on the recent quantum mechanics assessment." She turned to face him, noting how his partially phased form seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. "I know my scores have been inconsistent." "Inconsistent?" Vextar's laugh echoed across multiple dimensions. "Child, you achieved perfect marks on theoretical applications while failing practical implementation entirely. It's as if you understand the universe intellectually, but lack the basic sensory apparatus to interact with it directly." The words stung because they were true. Zara could visualize quantum states, calculate probability matrices, and theorize about dimensional mechanics with the best of them. But when it came to actually manipulating these forces, something her classmates did as naturally as breathing, she was utterly helpless. "I'm working on technological interfaces," she said quietly. "Earth's engineering cores is developing compensatory devices." Vextar finished, not unkindly. "Yes, I've read the reports. Fascinating how your species attempts to bridge evolutionary gaps through construction rather than adaptation. But tell me, Zara, why do you persist here? Surely there are institutions on Earth where you could excel among your own kind." The question haunted her as she made her way to her dormitory, a small, modified chamber that maintained Earth-normal atmosphere and gravity. Through her viewport, she could see the Academy's night cycle beginning, with artificial auroras painting the sky in colors that human eyes could barely perceive. Why did she persist? Because somewhere in her core, She believed that humanity deserved a place among the stars, not as pets or curiosities, but as equals. Yet with each passing day, surrounded by beings who could reshape matter with will alone, that belief felt increasingly naive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, and inevitably, new reminders of her limitations. But tonight, alone in her small corner of the cosmos, Zara Chan held on to the stubborn hope that being human might mean something more than her classmates or even she herself currently understood. The combat training facility hummed with energy fields designed to contain the devastating powers of the Academy's most gifted students. Zara stood at the edge of the practice arena, her standard-issue protection suit feeling inadequate against the casual displays of force surrounding her, while her classmates prepared for sparring matches with the confidence of beings born to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. She checked and rechecked her equipment, a collection of Earth-designed tools that felt primitive in comparison. Today, we'll be practicing dimensional displacement techniques, announced Commander Thex, a grizzled veteran whose species had evolved in the crushing gravity of a neutron star's orbit. His body was a walking contradiction, simultaneously dense as collapsed matter and graceful as a dancer. Partners will attempt to phase shift their opponents into parallel dimensions. Remember, the goal is incapacitation, not elimination. Zara's stomach dropped. Dimensional displacement required not just power, but an intuitive understanding of space-time the humans simply didn't possess. She watched as students paired off, their natural abilities complementing each other in ways that seemed almost choreographed. Zara, Commander Thex's voice carried across the arena. You'll be partnering with Keth. The Valorian's crystalline features reflected the arena's lighting as he approached, his armor plating shifting through the spectrum from deep amber to brilliant white. His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. This should be ... educational. Keth moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his form shifting between solid crystal and pure energy. A dimensional displacement technique came naturally, too. Valorians, their entire civilization, existed partially outside normal spacetime. As he began to phase shift, reality around him seemed to bend and warp. Zara raised her defensive projector, a device that created a localized stability field. It was designed to prevent dimensional displacement by anchoring matter to its current reality state. But as Keth's attack intensified, the projector's energy readings spiked dangerously. Interesting, Keth said, his voice echoing from multiple dimensions simultaneously. The human brought toys. He increased his assault, and Zara felt the familiar sensation of her technological aids failing under pressure. The stability field flickered, then collapsed entirely. Reality twisted around her, and for a terrifying moment, she felt herself being pulled into a parallel dimension where the laws of physics operated differently. Then, just as suddenly, she was back gasping, disoriented, and thoroughly defeated. Pathetic, Keth muttered, his form solidifying back into the primary dimension. Your devices are as weak as your species. The other students had stopped their own exercises to watch. Zara caught Shira's silver tendrils gleaming with amusement, as the psionic's mind voice carried to every telepathic being in the room. Perhaps we should request a new course, remedial reality manipulation, for evolutionary disadvantaged species. The laughter that followed felt like acid on Zara's spirit. She gathered her damaged equipment, noting how the other students instinctively moved away from her, not out of fear, but from the social contamination of associating with failure. Later, in the Academy's vast library, Zara sought refuge among the data crystals and quantum archives. Here, at least, she could compete on intellectual grounds. The library's AI, a vast consciousness that existed across multiple realities, manifested as a gentle glow around her study alcove. You seem troubled, Zara-chun, the AI observed, its voice carrying the weight of eons. I'm trying to understand why I'm here, she admitted, pulling up historical records on her holographic display. Every day, I'm reminded of what humans can't do. We can't manipulate energy. We can't phase through dimensions. We can't even communicate telepathically. And yet, the AI said thoughtfully, you're here. The admissions board doesn't make charitable decisions. Zara scrolled through the records, studying the achievements of various species. The Valorians had mastered dimensional manipulation millennia ago. The psionics had developed telepathic civilization before most worlds had evolved complex life. The Etherians existed simultaneously across multiple reality states. What did humans ever master? She asked bitterly. The AI was quiet for a long moment. Perhaps the question is not what your species has mastered, but what mastery means. People achieved spaceflight using controlled explosions. You developed computers from silicon and metal. You created art that moves beings to tears using nothing but sound waves and light patterns. Technology isn't the same as evolution, Zara protested. We're compensating for our limitations. Or perhaps, the AI suggested, you're demonstrating a different kind of strength entirely. As she walked back to her dormitory that night, Zara passed through the Academy's observation deck. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, she could see the cosmos in all its terrible beauty stars being born and dying, galaxies dancing through space. The endless cycle of creation and destruction that defined existence. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue world where billions of beings like her lived their brief lives. They couldn't reshape reality with thought, couldn't phase through. Dimensions couldn't read minds. But they had built cities, created poetry, and somehow found the courage to send one of their own to study among gods. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail, and new reminders of her limitations. But tonight, as she stood before the infinite cosmos, Zara Chun felt something stirring in her chest, not defeat, but determination. There had to be a reason humanity had earned its place among the stars. She just had to discover what it was. Cultural Exchange Planning Committee met in the Academy's most prestigious conference chamber, where holographic displays showed potential destinations across the galaxy. Zara sat at the far end of the curved table, her presence barely acknowledged by the other student representatives. The committee was composed of the Academy's most prominent students, those destined for leadership roles in their respective civilizations. The Valorian Crystal Gardens would provide excellent geological study opportunities, Keth suggested, his armored form gleaming under the chamber's adaptive lighting. Students could observe how consciousness directly shapes matter at the quantum level. Shira's silver tendrils sparked with interest. The psionic thought temples offer unparalleled insights into collective consciousness. Though I suppose some beings, her gaze flickered toward Zara, might find the experience overwhelming. Professor Vextar materialized at the head of the table, his multidimensional form casting shadows that seemed to move independently. The committee must choose a destination that offers educational value for all species represented. We cannot simply select locations that cater to the most advanced abilities. Which brings us to the obvious problem, interjected Drakmer, a titan whose massive form was barely contained by the chamber's expanded architecture. His voice rumbled like tectonic plates shifting. How do we plan meaningful experiences when some students lack the basic sensory apparatus to appreciate advanced civilizations? The comment was clearly directed at Zara, though none of the other students looked at her directly. She had grown accustomed to being discussed as if she weren't present, her humanity reduced to a logistical challenge. What about Earth? The words left Zara's mouth before she could stop them. The silence that followed was profound. Even the chamber's environmental systems seemed to pause. Keth's crystalline features shifted through what might have been surprise, while Shira's neural tendrils dimmed with what appeared to be pity. Earth? Drakmer's laughter shook the table. You want to take students from across the galaxy to observe. What? Primitive tool use? Basic agriculture? The human homeworld offers unique anthropological insights, Zara said, her voice steadier. Then she felt. Most advanced civilizations developed their capabilities through evolutionary pressure. Earth's species achieved space travel through pure technological innovation. Exactly, Keth added, his tone suggesting he was explaining something obvious to a child. Your people bypassed natural development through artificial means. It's interesting from a historical perspective, but hardly educational for beings who've mastered fundamental forces. Professor Vextar's multidimensional gaze focused on Zara. Elaborate on your proposal, Miss Chun. Zara stood, activating her personal holographic projector. Images of Earth appeared around the table cities, stretching toward the sky. Massive engineering projects, artistic achievements that spanned millennia. Earth represents something unique in galactic history. A species that achieved interstellar capability without evolutionary advantages. Compensatory technology, Shira said dismissively. We've studied your databases. Crude mechanical solutions to biological limitations. But consider the implications, Zara pressed on. Humans developed mathematics without telepathic knowledge sharing. We created art without empathic resonance. We built civilizations without hive mind coordination. Everything we achieved required unprecedented cooperation between individuals. Drakmer's massive form shifted impatiently. Cooperation born of necessity, not strength. Your species clusters together because individual humans are too weak to survive alone. The field trip is approved, Professor Vextar announced suddenly, his voice carrying across multiple realities. Earth offers an interesting case study in alternative development paths. The experience will provide valuable comparative insights. The other students exchanged glances. Keth's crystalline armor flickered with what might have been annoyance. If we must visit a primitive world, at least we'll have first-hand observation of how inferior species compensate for their limitations. It will be like visiting a living museum, Shira agreed, her mind voice carrying undertones of condescension. Educational in the same way that studying extinct civilizations provides historical context. As the meeting concluded, Zara remained seated while the other students filed out. She had won a small victory, but the way they discussed her homeworld felt like a deeper defeat. Earth wasn't being chosen for its achievements, but as an example of what happened when evolution failed to provide adequate capabilities. Zara. Professor Vextar's voice materialized beside her. I trust you understand the responsibility you've accepted. Your classmates will be observing human civilization through the lens of their own superior abilities. You'll need to prepare them for what they'll encounter. I understand, she replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her. What would her classmates see when they looked at Earth? Would they recognize the monumental achievements of human civilization? Or would they only see the limitations that made those achievements necessary? That night, as she prepared for sleep in her modified dormitory chamber, Zara accessed Earth's communication networks. The delay with significant messages took hours to travel between star systems, but she managed to send a priority transmission to the Global Education Council. Preparing for Academy field trip to Earth, she wrote. 23 students from advanced species. They expect to observe primitive civilization. Please advise on demonstration sites that showcase human achievements without appearing compensatory. The response would take days to arrive, but Zara already knew the challenge she faced. How do you prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars to beings who can reshape reality with thought alone? How do you demonstrate strength to creatures who define power by abilities humans would never possess? The answer, she suspected, lay not in what humans could do, but in what they had done and why they had done it. But convincing her classmates of that truth would require more than impressive demonstrations. It would require them to question Their fundamental assumptions about what strength really meant. Asterisk, the transport vessel. Synthesis descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull shimmering with adaptive camouflage that bent light around its crystalline surface. Through the observation ports, Zara watched her homeworld grow larger, its blue oceans and white clouds, painting a picture of serene beauty that masked the incredible complexity of the civilization below. Her classmates pressed against the viewing. Panels with expressions ranging from scientific curiosity to barely concealed disdain. Keth's crystalline armor reflected the planet's light as he gestured toward the continental masses. Interesting atmospheric composition, but I expected more ... development. Where are the reality-shaping spires? The dimensional gateways? Humans. Use physical infrastructure, Shira observed, her silver tendrils sparkling with telepathic activity as she attempted to sense the minds below. I'm detecting billions of individual consciousness signatures, but no collective intelligence network. How do they coordinate without telepathic unity? They don't, Drachma rumbled, his massive form dominating the transport's main cabin. Individual minds operating in isolation, struggling against entropy instead of transcending it. It's exactly what we expected from a primitive species. The ship's AI announced their approach to the first destination, New Geneva, Earth's primary diplomatic complex. From space, the city appeared as a glittering web of interconnected structures, with transportation arteries flowing like luminous rivers between towering architectural achievements. Asterisk, asterisk. Impressive scale, admitted Veltar, a gaseous astrolite whose form rippled with contained energy, but entirely mechanical. No integration with natural forces, no harmony with planetary consciousness. As they landed on the designated platform, Zara felt the familiar pull of Earth's gravity heavier than the Academy's controlled environment, but comforting in its constancy. The delegation was met by Dr. Sarah Chun, Zara's older sister and Earth's Director of Interstellar Relations. "Welcome to Earth," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the universal translators. "I'm honored to host representatives from such distinguished civilizations." The formal introductions proceeded smoothly, though Zara noticed how her classmates' body language conveyed polite condescension. They were scientists observing an interesting specimen, not peers meeting equals. The first tour took them through the Global Climate Management Center, where massive atmospheric processors worked to reverse centuries of environmental damage. Human engineers guided them through chambers where machines the size of city blocks filtered carbon from the air, while others seeded clouds with precision-designed particles to optimize weather patterns. "Fascinating," Keth observed, his crystalline features shifting through the spectrum. "Your species poisoned your own atmosphere, then built machines to clean it. On Valoris, we simply phase-shifted our industrial processes into parallel dimensions to avoid contamination. Different solutions for different capabilities," Sarah replied diplomatically. "Humans developed environmental engineering because we couldn't transcend physical limitations. We had to work within them." "Compensatory technology," Shira agreed, her mind voice carrying undertones of pity. "Your people deserve credit for persistence, even if your methods are indirect." But as the tour continued, something began to shift in the group's dynamic. The scale of human achievement was undeniable: cities housing millions of people, coordinated without telepathic networks. Transportation systems moving billions of individuals daily, managed through pure computational logistics. Art galleries, where music and visual experiences moved even telepathic beings to unexpected emotional responses. "This is puzzling," Veltar admitted as they stood in the Museum of Human Achievement. "Your species created beauty without empathic resonance. How do you ensure aesthetic experiences affect your audience?" "We don't," Zara replied, watching her classmates study a holographic display of human music throughout history. "Human art. is created by individuals expressing their personal experience. Others respond based on their own emotional architecture. There's no guaranteed connection. But that's... Drakmer's massive form shifted uncomfortably. That's impossibly inefficient. How do you achieve cultural unity without shared aesthetic? Experience? We don't achieve unity, Sarah said quietly. We achieve cooperation. Billions of individuals, each with their own perspective, choosing to work together despite their differences. The moment of revelation came at the Memorial to Global Catastrophes, where holographic displays showed humanity's darkest moments: wars, pandemics, natural disasters, and the response to each crisis. The exhibits detailed how humans had repeatedly faced extinction-level events and survived through collective action. The third global pandemic, the memorial's AI narrator explained, killed 17% of the human population. Response was coordinated across 847 nations, involving 3.2 billion individuals working in concert, without telepathic coordination, without hive mind efficiency, without any guarantee of personal survival. Keth's crystalline armor had dimmed too. Its lowest setting. They volunteered to risk their lives for strangers? The pattern repeats throughout human history. The AI continued. Individual sacrifice for collective survival. Cooperative achievement beyond individual capability. Technological innovation driven by necessity rather than evolutionary advantage. Shira's silver tendrils had gone completely still. But why? If individual survival is impossible, why not simply accept extinction? Why struggle against natural selection? Zara looked at her classmates' beings who had never known vulnerability, never faced limitations they couldn't transcend through evolution or power. Because we believe existence is worth preserving, even if we can't guarantee our own survival. Especially if we can't guarantee it. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Zara saw her classmates, looking at her not as a curiosity or a failed experiment, but as a representative of something they had never encountered before. Strength that emerged from weakness, power that grew from limitation, achievement that transcended individual capability. Tomorrow, Sarah announced, we'll visit the Global Cooperation Center, where current crisis response is coordinated. There's been a solar flare warning, and you'll observe how humans respond to planetary-scale threats without advanced evolutionary capabilities. As they returned to their temporary quarters, Zara noticed the change in her classmates' behavior. The casual dismissal had been replaced by something resembling respect or perhaps, more accurately, puzzlement at finding strength in a place they had never thought to look. The Global Cooperation Center buzzed with controlled urgency as Earth's crisis response teams coordinated their reaction to the incoming solar flare. Massive displays showed real-time data from monitoring stations across the solar system, while thousands of human specialists worked in perfect synchronization. Despite the absence of telepathic coordination, Zara's classmates stood in the observation gallery, watching the largest crisis response operation in human history unfold before them. The solar flare would arrive in 18 hours, carrying enough electromagnetic energy to disrupt civilization's technological infrastructure. For most species, such an event would trigger evolutionary adaptation or reality manipulation to simply phase the planet out of harm's way. Humans had chosen a different path entirely. Atmospheric ionization will peak at 1437 Global Standard Time, announced Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's chief science coordinator. All non-essential electronics will be shut down. Essential systems will be hardened against electromagnetic interference. Emergency protocols are now active across all population centers. Keth's crystalline armor flickered with confusion. You're not deflecting the energy or phasing out of its path. You're accepting the impact and preparing to survive it? We can't deflect solar flares, Dr. Webb replied matter-of-factly. so we've designed our civilization to withstand them. Every major system has backup protocols. Every population center has emergency supplies. Every individual knows their role in the recovery process. But the risk, Shira protested, her silver tendrils sparking with agitation. Billions of lives dependent on technological solutions that could fail. Why not evacuate to safer star systems? Because Earth is our home, Zara said quietly. We don't abandon places or people when they become inconvenient. We adapt, we endure, we help each other survive. The next few hours revealed the true scope of human cooperation. As the solar flare's leading edge reached Earth's magnetosphere, the planet's cities went dark in coordinated waves. But rather than chaos, the darkness revealed something remarkable: millions of communities, activating emergency protocols with precision that would have impressed any hive mind. Fascinating, Veltar observed, his gaseous form rippling with interest. They're maintaining social cohesion during a planetary crisis without telepathic coordination. How is this possible? Practice, Dr. Webb explained. Every human practices. Emergency protocols from childhood. We've experienced enough disasters to know that survival depends on everyone understanding their role and choosing to fulfill it. Drakmar's massive form had gone completely still, choosing, not compelled by instinct or evolutionary programming. Individual choice to participate in collective survival. It's inefficient, Keth said, but his tone had lost its earlier dismissiveness. Countless opportunities for individual failure, system breakdowns, communication errors. Any advanced species would have solved these problems through evolution or technology. We have solved them, Zara replied, watching the displays show community after community executing their emergency protocols flawlessly. Just not the way you expected. As the solar flare peaked and began to subside, Earth's recovery began immediately. Power grids came online in sequence. Communication networks re-established contact, and emergency supplies moved to areas of greatest need. The entire process was coordinated by millions of individuals, making conscious choices to help others before securing their own comfort. The casualty count, Dr. Webb announced, is 0. No deaths directly attributable to the solar flare. Infrastructure damage is minimal and within acceptable parameters. Full recovery is expected within 72 hours. The silence from the visiting students was profound. They had witnessed something unprecedented, entire civilization choosing collective. Survival over individual advantage. Technological innovation over evolutionary adaptation. Cooperation over competition. Professor Vextar, Keth said finally, his crystalline voice carrying a note of wonder. I request permission to extend our stay. I believe we've misunderstood something fundamental about human achievement.